Great Bear Resources is responsible for a spectacular gold discovery in the historic Red Lake district in northwestern Ontario. The company has found gold mineralization in every single drill hole on the Dixie project, over 5 kilometers. CEO Chris Taylor is a geologist and mining entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience with both producers and exploration companies. Chris is also chairman of Kodiak Copper, working on another exciting new copper-gold discovery in British Columbia. You now understand why we invited Chris Taylor to be our keynote speaker for the 2020 Discovery Day.
Welcome, Mr. Taylor.
Well, thanks for having me. It's too bad it's not in person this year. I really enjoyed the venue last year.
Yeah, that's too bad, but we're very glad that you're joining us online. It's very early where you are, right?
It is atrociously early, but I am conscious, so I'll do my best.
What's the time now, Chris?
Oh, I was exaggerating. It's 7:15, so it's really not that bad.
Okay.
I saw you had a cup of coffee.
You bet.
That's good, that's good. We're looking forward to hearing your presentation in a minute. But first, Willem would like to, well, you two know each other, so...
Yeah, I think we met a few years ago. Hi, Chris. I think the first time we met was in London for Mines and Money, December 2018. Shortly after you published some remarkable results. Can you go back to that point in time? Where were you then and where are you now?
Well, hopefully we're in the position where Commodity Discovery Funds is a happy shareholder, Willem, because you were one of the first people that invested in Great Bear, and you did it at an early stage when we'd made one of our many discoveries. So you saw something before a lot of other people did, and I don't know, maybe you tell people how that worked out for you.
Well, as you know, we all have been a great supporter of Great Bear Resources, not because we know each other, because we only met after the discovery, but we recognize that this very high-grade gold discovery in the Red Lake district, you know, was bringing a wonderful opportunity because not that many investors were waking up right away. I remember you did a first private placement and everybody wanted to step in. And then 2-3 weeks later, you know, nobody wanted to buy a stock anymore. And we bought in the open market, I think 3% of the whole company. And, but well, it's not about me, it's about you. And we're waiting for your keynote. So the floor is yours.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, thank you. I'm just trying to see my presentation. Do you see it in front of the screen in front of you now?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we see it.
It's there.
There it is.
Yeah. So you can go ahead.
Okay. Yep. So as you mentioned, Great Bear is focused on the Red Lake district of Ontario. What we have found here is probably one of the largest gold discoveries in recent years in Canada. And I'm just confirming because this is a new format. You can see while I scroll through these slides, correct?
Not yet. Chris, maybe?
Maybe we can show them to the audience while Chris is restarting his presentation. Yeah. And Great Bear Resources is up over 70% this year, which is good, but it's not amazing. But if we look back to the results in the last 3 years, you know, Great Bear is up over 7,000%.
So do we see the date of the IPO as well, 2016, or were they?
It was already listed before that time, but you can see here that in Q4, actually it was September 2018, they published their first drill results, and then the stock shot up from 50 cents to 150. And then, as I said in the small chat with Chris, you know, a few weeks later, you could buy all the shares around $2, and nobody was paying any attention anymore. And that's where we bought 3% of the company in the open market. And we were always expecting Great Bear to do well, because once you drill in the Red Lake district and you find the high-grade gold, we know from history that some amazing companies, some amazing gold mines have been grown out of the first discovery holes. And that's what seems to happen with Great Bear now. And of course, it's still quite early stage, and I think they're only halfway drilling that project, and in a few years' time, we'll know how large this system is. I just get a call that Chris is available, and he has his presentation up and running, so I'll shut up now.
Yeah. Mr. Taylor? Yeah?
All right.
Everything ready?
I apologize for the technical glitch, but I'm back online now. So
go ahead.
As Willem was saying, we've made a major discovery in the Red Lake District of Ontario. So as usual, I'm going to be making some cautionary or some forward-looking statements. So as we say, take it all with a bit of a grain of salt. But I thought I would recap to what Willem was saying earlier is we were speaking a year ago, just over, well, about a year and a half ago now. So April 12th, 2019, when we were at the Commodity Discovery Day, we were trading about $3, and now here we are trading over $15. So there's been more than a 400% return over the last year or so. And again, I think we had commodity discovery funds as shareholders from around the 50-cent level, or some level approximately in that position. So why has the company done so well? Well, principally because we've made one of the biggest gold discoveries in the country. And since Commodity Discovery Day last year, we've completed 3 different financings. And these checked off our boxes for our main goals of raising money at higher values each time. So all in Canadian dollars, we recently completed a financing of $33 million. This was what we'd call a charity flow-through mechanism in Canada. So that was either at $17 a share or at $11 a share. Prior to that, there was a $16.5 million raise at $8.35 a share. And prior to that, there was almost an $11 million raise at $5.45 a share. So what we ended up doing over the course of the year, the intervening time period, was, well, we've collected a number of significant awards in our industry. So the highest award in mining in Canada is the Canadian Institute of Mines A.O. Dufresne Exploration Achievement Award. Great Bear won that earlier this year. It was a great honor for the company. This is based on growing recognition for the scope and scale and quality of the discovery that we've made. Prior to that, we were awarded the Northwest Ontario Prospectors Association Bernie Schneider's Discovery of the Year Award. We've been a top performing stock on the Toronto Venture Exchange for 2 years in a row. So we were awarded top 50 status last year and the year before that. And what's really a fascinating change since CDFund's day last year is the number of analysts that are picking up the story. We now have 6 analysts that are covering the story, and they have price targets on the upside case all the way up to about $45 a share. So this would be what Willem's talking about when you make a major discovery, the sort of values that you're able to capture in the story. And again, we're trading at about $15 a share. So one of the things that I thought I would talk about here is really what makes Great Bear different. How were we so successful? Yes, we made a discovery with the drill bit, but there's a few other things that we've done that I think are really instrumental in making us a real success story. And it's something that other companies in our industry, I believe, should maybe take a few pages out of our book and try to repeat the process. And right at the end of the presentation, we have made a new discovery with another company that we put together, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But the first point that I'd like to discuss is capital efficiency. Then we'll talk about doing a little bit of science, and then the benefits of a good jurisdiction. So capital efficiency with Great Bear is one of our most endearing traits to investors. And effectively, for a company of our size, which is now well over $800 million market cap Canadian, this is now a company that has only raised, to this point in time, this is very important, we've only raised $80 million in total. And we've spent on the project $32 million so far. So what that means is that out of the $80 million that we've raised, we've still got almost $50 million in our treasury, and we've been very careful with the deployment of capital. So that means every dollar that we've spent on the project has generated more than $25 of market capitalization or return for shareholders. I believe that is the best in the exploration industry today. So you can see some share charts here. If you're interested in reading analyst reports on the story, there's a list of them on the right side of the image there. Canaccord, CIBC, that's one of the large banks in Canada, they initiated coverage last week. Cormark Securities, 8 Capital, PI Financial, and Stifel GMP. One of the things that makes Great Bear perform very well in the markets is our low share count. We'll get into that in a sec. But we are very averse to dilution. We want to make sure, because we're shareholders of the company, we want to make sure that our individual shares are worth as much as possible. And that means that fully diluted, even factoring in the options within the company, we're only at 57 million shares issued and outstanding. There's fully diluted, and there's 52.9 million shares issued at this point in time. So it's a lower share count and a higher market capitalization than most of the companies in the exploration industry today. So what we see repeated again and again, and you know, there's an old expression that there's nothing new under the sun, but what we see in the industry again and again is basically the mistake of allowing the market cap of a company through the discovery and development process to grow while forgetting about the share count. And this really means that you end up with a dilution problem, and that dilution problem is going to erode shareholder value. I realize with the audience that I'm speaking to that this is absolutely nothing new to you either, but I think it's worth stating here. So we are not trying to repeat history with Great Bear. Usually the case is you make a discovery, you raise excessive money on a dilutive basis, and you end up with a diluted company that trades sideways in share price as the market cap increases. We say, why is that the best process for us to repeat? There's the other aspect of the company that we should touch on a little bit, is that there tends to be a marriage in the industry between projects and the geologists or the entrepreneurs that run them. We've noted in Great Bear, if you look at the fact that we will quite readily option out projects that are not a dominant focus for the company. We'll make sure that other companies are working on these. And the reason is you have to accept a clean divorce in our space. Don't fall in love with the asset that you have. Let the results drive you towards continuing work on those things. That's a common mistake in the industry. We all have our loves and pet projects, and as geologists, sometimes we feel as though we're married to the project. That's something that we need to avoid. The other thing that's important here is that making the company grow like Great Bear is a marathon race. It's not a sprint. So it takes years for a company like ours to convince the broader market, this includes the analysts, the peers in the industry, everybody else, that you've made a major legitimate discovery, and then it takes many more years to build a mine. So just be aware during that process that you shouldn't rush things and get ahead of where the market perception and the understanding of the project is. That's important for controlling dilution. And I put a funny little graphic on the side here. I always feel as the geologist running a project, because these companies, these exploration companies, as we know, the big difference, like Willem was alluding to, is these are not normal mining companies. They're not cash flow positive. And that means the big hand on the right side of the image, this is the hand of the bankers. That can often have a very intense control on the outcome of how these projects are financed and ultimately how they're run. So one of the common themes that we see in the industry is that companies will say with great pride, we've increased from 1 drill rig or 3 drill rigs to 15 or 20 drill rigs. Well, I always say when I see that news, congratulations, you're now burning money at some multiple 5 times what you were before. Are you spending that money in a way that's advancing your understanding and the value of the project? In my experience, looking at the industry at large, I see that a lot of the time the money gets spent, but the project isn't getting any more valuable. But what you guarantee you're going to do is make sure that the bankers know another financing is coming soon, and that means that there's more buying on the financings, less in the open market. That's a process we try to avoid. The other one is always going with the theory that the market wants to see such and such, X, whatever X happens to be. In our case, If we had rushed to a maiden resource publication a year or two ago, when we were first made the first discoveries on the project, I believe that the company would have been perceived as having just another Red Lake style discovery, just another high-grade gold zone. But by waiting and patiently doing our due diligence, we found the massive new LP fault zone discovery, and the valuation of the company has gone forward, almost exponentially. The other mistake that companies often make is they may sell a project too early. In Great Bear's case, we had offers on the table 2 years ago, a year ago, even 3 years ago, for larger mining companies to purchase the project, to purchase the company. If we had said yes to those offers, yes, we would have made returns for our shareholders, small returns, crystallized those returns early on, but we would have been overestimating the opportunity cost of holding on to Great Bear. And that means that by being patient and having a good process in place, we've grown the company to a much bigger state. So the other mistake that I see people make is that they sometimes raise too much money too early. If the share price is lower than where you think it's going to be, don't take in 5 or 6 times more money than you need for the next year or so of operations. Take in what you need, do the work carefully, and raise the money at higher prices like we've done with Great Bear. And the other factor that I come across a lot in the industry is that there's an over-reliance on expertise. So in this case, if somebody has worked on a project at a point in history, or they've worked, for instance, if you've acquired a project like Great Bear did for not very much money, people can think that because a so-called expert has worked on it before, or because you didn't buy the project for an arm and a leg, that there is no value there. Well, you have to understand that the junior mining exploration industry exists because nobody gets it right the first time they work on a project. It's almost impossible. So what you do is you look for projects that have good data, good value, and then think about them differently. The other conventional wisdom, the capital efficiency point that I'd like to make here, is that a lot of companies will drill first and ask questions later. This is the old euphemism, shoot first and ask questions later, or kill them all and let God sort them out. So I would really advocate, one of the reasons that we've been successful is that we didn't skip the science as we got working on the project. So it was a little bit more painful financially in terms of the expenses up front, but it's saving us a lot of money over the long term. So when you spend money on collecting data, use the data, figure it out, let your geologists think about what they've found, and that's the capital efficiency that you see come in over the long time that will get reflected in the share price. The other one, and this I find fairly amusing actually, is that I often hear in our space, in our industry, we're going to issue some drill results, they're going to be good, and then we're going to raise money at higher prices. Well, generally, as we know, that's completely wrong. Usually the market will buy on rumor and sell on news. And that means it's more of a survival process through news releases for a lot of companies at an early stage. And so they need to be aware of it, that investors have many, many reasons to sell your stock and only one reason to buy them, and that's really the fear of missing out on future gains. We try to keep that in mind at all times. You have to communicate. Tell people on an ongoing basis why your story is valuable and why they should be shareholders and where that valuation could go to. Another point here, and we'll get past this very quickly, but if you've seen a process completed by an expert on a past mine, it doesn't mean that they know what they're doing on your project right now. So expertise, again, don't rely on it too much. You have to go to the point where work is the best substitute for an opinion. An opinion is easy. Hindsight is always 20/20, but doing careful, diligent work like we've done is really the way to capture that value. And the one that we come across the most often with Great Bear, and this is based on the magnitude of the LP fault discovery that we found, is that because nobody's seen it before, it can't be true. Well, the proof is in the pudding, as we say. Lots of drill holes are going to show you whether your case is true or not. That's our method here, is drill the hundreds of holes, show the value, show the size, and watch the value come in. Just take a sip of my coffee here. So one of the most talented group of individuals that I know of in our industry are really the geologists. They're very resourceful. They often wear many hats. And one of the best keys for success with a mining company is to let the geologists do their work. So there's a tendency in the industry to sometimes have the drill programs run from the office or run by the groups that are providing the money for the work. Now, that's absolutely the wrong approach. A CEO sitting in an office in Vancouver or Toronto or Sydney, wherever it happens to be, is probably not the person that should be making all the individual drilling decisions on a project. Let the geologists work, let them understand the data, and watch the value come in accordingly. So this was one of my favorite slides from early on in Great Bear. And it looks a little bit silly, but it's actually very, very important as an exploration or mining investor that you keep an eye on these points. So this is where the jurisdiction and the location of a project comes into play. Often you'll see pictures like the top left, beautiful mountains, or the top right, helicopters flying around, or the bottom right, some sort of beautiful lake or other situation. And you'll almost never see pictures of the bottom left with these guys. Nobody wants those around your project. But I often said early on with Great Bear that on this slide in front of you, we have none of these things. And it's absolutely important because we're in a mining jurisdiction that's nice flat ground. We never have helicopters flying around, so all the money is deployed on drilling and other work that advances the project. And it's not one of these situations where you're hidden underneath a lake or a body of water or you have special environmental concerns. And because it's in Canada in a Tier 1 mining jurisdiction, we don't have any of the guys on the bottom left as well. There's so many projects and companies in the world that are working with a combination of these factors, and ultimately these erode shareholder value. So this is the kind of thing when you set up a company and are working on projects, you may be looking at company A and company B as potential investments. I would look for these things when you're looking to make your investment, and jurisdiction is a huge plus when it comes to ultimate returns. What we do have with Great Bear is what you see on the image in front of you. On the map view, you can see the dashed line, or the dashed line with the dots. That's a power line that runs over the project. That's the power line that runs power to all the local mines in the Red Lake area. You see above that the highway. The highway runs parallel to the claims. And you see on the left, you have a network of logging roads, you have clear-cut mining, you have open pit gravel mining on our project, and these are all major pluses. So you're not in a sensitive area, you're in a highly disturbed area in a Tier 1 mining jurisdiction with all the infrastructure you need in place. This is a huge factor for Great Bear's success. And going through, so those are a few of the main points that lead to a successful mining company, and ours in particular. But now I'm going to talk about our Dixie project and some of the discoveries that we've made since, again, over the last 2 years, but even since Commodity Discovery Day last year. So the Red Lake District of Ontario, it's in Northwest Ontario. It's plugged right into the highway network. It is one of the Tier 1 mining jurisdictions in Canada. It's basically Canada's high-grade gold capital. What we have is a series of projects, with our flagship Dixie project being the main one, that are 100% owned in this area. So there is no divided interest in these projects. It's a key to being successful. We ended up buying out at an early stage Newmont. Was an owner, a 1/3 owner of this property that we've picked up, portions of it anyway. And before we did any drilling, we purchased out their interest. We bought that out for about $80,000 Canadian, $80,000 Canadian. And right now, that would be worth somewhere to the tune of about $300 million Canadian, that interest 3 years later. So it shows you consolidate the interest up front so that you get the full benefit of the discoveries that you made. As I mentioned early on, Great Bear has about $48 million of cash on hand. What that means is that with the 5 drill rigs that we have drilling on the project right now, we're going to be able to keep drilling all the way into 2022. And that means that we don't need to finance in the near term to keep the process going. And that should be sufficient capital for us to drill our initial maiden resource, which will make it, in our mind, one of the largest new gold discoveries in the world, one of the highest grade, shallowest gold discoveries in the world, and one of the cheapest to drill off in the world as well. Those are the goals that we want to put together and show over the next year or two. And as we know, we could go over the management details, but we have a very qualified management team. These are people that have found projects. These are people that have built projects into mines, and these are people that have sold projects to large mining companies. So it's a very talented team that we've got in place. So the Red Lake, Ontario, the Red Lake District, why is this important? Well, there's a map of Ontario. There's a map of Red Lake. As you can see, the Red Lake District is not up in the north. It's not up in the Arctic regions of Canada. It's in the southern portion of Canada. It's plugged into the highway network. What Red Lake's famous for is being the high-grade gold capital of Canada. What that means is that over the last 80 years or so, there have been over 20 active gold mines in Red Lake. Right now, there's one big active gold mine. This is now owned by Evolution Mining. It was sold from Goldcorp, was acquired by Newmont. Newmont sold the project to Evolution. Evolution just did a thorough researching of the historical data and figured they have another 10 million ounces that they're going to be producing on at the main Red Lake gold mine. It shows you, after already producing about 25 million ounces at the main mine, they probably have another 10 million to go. It shows you the size that gold projects can reach in the Red Lake District when it's a major find like the Red Lake Gold Mine or like Great Bear's LP Fault discovery. Now, right now, there are three mines really in development. One of them is Battle North. One of them is Pure Gold Mining. And the one that's the newest discovery in this sequence would be Great Bear. We're going through the permitting and resource definition phases ultimately to get a mine together on our project. So over 30 million ounces of production. And one of the things that Red Lake is most famous for is having very great depths of high-grade gold mineralization. It's hard to imagine when you're sitting on the surface, but you have gold mines, the main mine mines down to over 2.5 vertical kilometers. That's like an hour to get from surface to the bottom of the mine using the elevator system. It's incredible how far mining can chase these major discoveries. And the Red Lake area, I mean, again, it's famous in Canada for having been found almost by chance. It's a bit of an amusing story. So in the 1930s, when prospectors and these early sort of pioneer types were working in this area, there was a story that there was a thunderstorm one night and a tree blew over and they found gold in the roots of the tree. And this is really diagnostic of the sort of serendipitous discovery of many of these major deposits. There's another one that I know of where somebody threw a hammer at a fox or wolf or something like that. And when they picked up the hammer and turned over the rock, it was silver. In this case, it was gold. And you can see some of the images from the early development in the 1930s in Red Lake. A fun fact about Red Lake is that in the 1930s, this was one of the busiest airports in the world during the initial gold rush. So you can see some of the float planes at that time that were bringing people in and out. Of course, since then, we've had the highway network come in, and now you can drive up here with your family sedan. You could actually drive right to the drill sites that Great Bear has very easily because of the excellent access in this area. The image on the right is the main Red Lake gold mine today. As I mentioned, that was recently purchased by Evolution Mining. One of the key factors in this area is that you get strong community engagement with the project. So Great Bear has been very diligent in getting basically community support for the project at a very early stage, earlier than we would have needed to from a permitting point of view or anything like that. But early on, we got into, for instance, now we have a long-term exploration benefits agreement with our First Nations neighbors and partners. One of the First Nations groups has been working with the company for the past 3 years. These guys are now under a formal agreement with Great Bear that has mutual support for the project going forward all the way up to mine development. It's really an excellent achievement for us. But what it does is it lets us prioritize community involvement, community engagement, community employment, and getting that buy-in on the project, which will lead to smooth permitting and smooth project development. So a very important step early on, something that most companies should do earlier than they do. So some of the technical details, this is really what I enjoy talking about the most. As a geologist, it's what gets us excited. It's what gets us out in the morning, gets us out of bed in the morning. But these are the technical details around the Dixie discovery. This shows what major discovery this is. So Here's an image on the right side of the screen of, again, do you see any mountains in that image? You can see the claim boundaries in white. You can see the highway in a black line on the top right. You can see the gravel pits. This is a drone image from about 3 years ago. Now most of that is clear cut on the forest because of all the forestry activity being undertaken, some of it by the First Nations neighbors that we have. And on the map on the bottom right, one of the important things to convey here is the raw scale of the Dixie project. So in the Red Lake area, from where it's labeled Madsen up through Red Lake, Koshner, Balmertown, the Red Lake mine, there's about 20 kilometers of trends where they have over 30 million ounces of production, probably over 40 million ounces of production at the end of the day. Our Dixie project, by contrast, the blue rectangle that you see paralleling the highway, that's about 22 kilometers long. So it's about the same strike length as all the mines in the district. And what runs down the center of the Dixie project is this big LP fault discovery that we're drilling right now. And it is the length of the project. It's why we staked the project. And it shows you the full potential of the Dixie project. We don't yet know what it is, but it's not unreasonable to say that it would be similar to the largest gold zones in the district, like the Red Lake mine. And that's really where it's exceptional, is Great Bear owns the entire thing, 100%. So there are two types of gold discoveries on this project. We're going to get into that in a minute. Some of them are like the other mines in the Red Lake area, and some of them are like other major deposits in Canada, particularly the Hemlo Gold Mine, and we'll talk about that momentarily. I'm just going to have a sip of my coffee so that I can keep talking. So this is the reason, the image in front of you is the reason that there's so much gold on the Dixie project in the first place. So you can see this is government data. It's seismic data collected by the Ontario government, or the Canadian government actually, and it's projected along a slice through the geology in this area. And you can see those lines that are yellow glowing black lines. Those are the big transcrustal faults that occur in this area. Why is that important? Well, if any of you have granite countertops in your kitchen or elsewhere in your house, if you try to pour a glass of water through your granite countertop, absolutely nothing's going to happen. We all know that's the case. Well, the most of the rock here is granite or greenstone belts, similar. And what you can't do is get the hot fluids from deep in the earth that have the gold in them to surface unless you break the rock first. If you took a hammer and smashed your countertop, well, now, of course, you're going to be able to pour your glass of water through the countertop. It's the same principle here. So there's two big faults that have allowed gold-bearing hot fluids to come up towards the surface where it can create gold deposits that we can mine. One of them runs up parallel to the main Red Lake mine complex. So on that one, you're going to have over 30 to 40 million ounces of gold production ultimately at the end of the day. That's the Red Lake mining complex. The other one is labeled in red, and the one that we staked our project to control, this is the LP fault structure that runs along the Dixie project. We knew about this from government data. We staked the project to control it. That fault is what we're drilling right now, and that's what we're getting all the high-grade gold out of. So what does this look like on section and map? Well, looking in front of you, if you look from A to A primed, you're going to slice the world in half, and you're going to look along that section. Now, the very important thing to note here, that in Red Lake, with 30 million ounces of gold produced so far, the average width of a gold zone is about 2 meters. So it's very narrow. It's about the width of a sidewalk. So those gold zones, when they're rich, they're 2 or 3 meters wide. You can follow them down for kilometers even. That's the basis for most of the mining in the area. That's the basis for the other companies that are going into production in the Red Lake area. It's based on these narrow zones. On the cross-section view, on the right side of the image, you can see that we have these types of gold veins. These are the Dixie Limb Zone and the Hinge Zone that you see in front of you. They go right from surface on our project. The deepest hole that we've drilled is down to about 800 meters so far. There's no need or desire to drill it all the way down to a couple kilometers yet. That will be in the future, probably from an underground development standpoint. But the difference is, what we've found with the LP fault zone is on the right of the image. And I often have a hard time conveying the raw scale of what we're looking at here. So remember that an average gold zone in this area is about 2 meters wide. The width of the gold system on the LP fault zone is up to 500 or 600 meters wide. So we put out results this morning. We had a news release, for instance, right from the near surface. We put out over 100 meters width of multi-gram gold material right in the near surface. And within that, right in the near surface, we have high-grade multi-ounce material. And we see that pattern repeating itself again and again for kilometer after kilometer after kilometer. We're drilling off a zone along the LP fault now, which is about 4 or 5 kilometers long. It's at its widest in the middle of that zone, and then it tapers out towards the margins after kilometers. But the continuity of the geology, the continuity of the gold mineralization has been exceptional. But the scale is what people have the hardest time understanding, and it's why Great Bear has found something that's very, very unique in the industry, and certainly in this area, is just the raw scale and the continuity and the size and the predictability are all absolutely outstanding. What does the gold look like? Well, just so that we can capture what we see here, on the top left of the image, you're looking at gold, what that looks like inside the big LP fault zone. It's just gold. There's very little in the way of sulfide minerals or other accessory minerals. Basically, the majority of it is gold. If you look at the top right image again, you can see that that's gold mineralization from the LP fault, and that's the big transcrustal structure. The map that you're seeing in front of you, what's important to realize is that most of the time when gold systems are discovered in the world today, and they're this shallow and they're this big, usually they're low grade. And what you're looking at on the map in front of you, those pink dots are those are intercepts in drill core that are more than 20 grams per ton gold. Then the red ones are 5 to 20 grams per ton gold. The orange ones are 3 to 5, the brownish ones 1 to 3, and the little blue ones are less than 1. The only deposits in Canada that have this scale are about 1 gram per ton or under 1 gram per ton. Here you're looking at something with similar size, but much higher grade. And you can see beside that, it's labeled DL, DHZ, and Arrow. Those are Red Lake style gold zones that we have as satellites around the big LP fault zone. These would be similar to what, say, Pure Gold is going into production on in our district, what Battle North is going into production on, or what the main Red Lake gold mine is going into, has been producing for many years. But the LP fault zone, the big gold bearing structure, is completely different and completely outsized in terms of the physical footprint and size of the system. So progress just within the last 9 months on the project. This is a long section. You're cutting the earth along the axis of that main zone. This is why it's exciting. This is why it's exceptional. So looking at, again, the dots that you see on the pictures in front of you, again, the pink dots are more than 20 grams per ton gold. You can see the surface. If you look at the September 2020 image in front of you, you can see the surface running along, and you can see that high-grade gold present to surface over a huge area. And then you can see the other high-grade intercepts, in the red, the other intercepts. There really is nothing like this in recent memory in Canada in terms of size and consistency of high-grade gold mineralization, especially at these shallow depths. We've only drilled the LP zone down to about 400 or 500 meters. What's exceptional, though, is we only found this just over a year and a half ago, or about a year and a half ago now. So if you dial the clock back to December of last year, we only had 30 drill holes in the system, and we had a lot of interest from the industry, but people could not imagine that it would look like the image on the right. It just couldn't get their heads around the size and the continuity. Now you're seeing on the image of the right, you see all those pink dots and red dots. You're tying together that high-grade gold over kilometers of strike length. And that's now with more than 170 drill holes on the structure. Now, what people expected to see versus what's on the project now, this is really one of the main distinctions. So this is a slide that I pulled out from a presentation just a couple weeks ago now. So the early expectation for any gold system of this size, we even thought this early on, would be like the image on the left. This is a cross section across the LP fault zone. We thought that the lower grade mineralization in the gram to a few grams range would be like the pink envelope that you see, and the little pink lozenges would be the high grade. And that was a reasonable assumption at the time because people would be used to, in a system this size, seeing a distribution of grade like that. It's the raisins in a bun analogy. It's totally wrong. What we're seeing in the rock right now is predictability. And the reality is that as we drill across this thing over kilometers, we keep hitting the high-grade gold mineralization within predictable sheets. And those are these dashed lines that we've illustrated on the image here. And again, even on 50 meter, 100 meter, 200 meter centers, the more we drill, the more we hit these high grade gold controls. And it's predictability. If you're a miner and you want to make a major mine, you want to put it into production, you're going to want to see the predictability of where that grade occurs. This is an exceptional find because it's predictable over such a huge strike length. And we show the predictability. We really hammer this home in our news releases. These are more cross sections. You can see an image on the bottom right showing what the gold looks like when it's in one of these high grade sheet-like zones that occur over kilometers. But we go to the extra step of having very good transparency in our data disclosure. If you read off the numbers down these individual assays on any of these sections, you can see that the gold is very continuous over these zones that we report, and that's exceptional. But if you look, for instance, at section 2500 and look at drill hole BR 146 and the numbers that we've generated there. So you can see there's 81 grams per ton gold over 10 meters. What does that look like? Well, it looks like the call out on the right. And that means that if you read off those numbers at 38 meters depth, and remember it's an angled hole, so that's probably closer to 30 meters vertical depth, you see 583 gram per ton gold right near the surface. What that means is that if you had an afternoon and a hand shovel, you could expose this gold zone at surface and you would be in the high grade gold as soon as you expose the bedrock. That is so rare in this country and around the world now that it's one of the features that makes Great Bear one of the most exciting gold discoveries in the world right now. And again, this is to reiterate continuity along kilometers. Again, an updated long section image, and you can see reporting those zones, continuity of gold within the reported zones. This was from a news release that we put out today, and continuity that we're seeing as we drill it out along kilometers as well. Why is this important? What's the future value of Great Bear likely to look at? Well, we have to drill it to show you, but we could point to a few discoveries that we think are telling and we think are indicating what could come. One of these is the Hemlo gold mine. Geologically, this is the most similar discovery to the LP fault zone at Great Bear. Now, Hemlo, it was drilled off over about 2.6 kilometers of strike length. It was about 8 meters wide on average of about 8.5 grams per ton gold. So that's not as wide as what we're seeing at the LP fault, and it's not as big of a strike length, but it did generate almost 23 million ounces of gold. Now, the difference that you would look at between what Great Bear has found and what Hemlo has found is that at Great Bear, there's more high-grade gold mineralization in the drill core closer to surface than what they were able to put together at Hemlo. At Hemlo, most of the high-grade gold came in below about 500 meters vertical depth. You can see it illustrated in that red blob on the lower part of the image. What we're seeing is shallower high-grade gold over a larger area at the LP fault. So I can't tell you today that we're going to have 23 million ounces of gold. We have a lot more drilling to do. But if you want to look at parallels for potential size and the value that these things might have, you can look at Hemlo because it's geologically similar and it's a model that we're using to inform our exploration drilling as we proceed. So how do you show that in data? Well, you show scatter plots of data. And I know this is a little esoteric and maybe not so easily grasped, but I think if you look at the data, it's pretty plain. So you look at the LP fault drill results that we have in blue dots, the dots from our other zones that you see in the lighter blue dots, and look at the underground grade at Hemlo and look at the open pit grades at Hemlo. You can see that the overwhelming majority of our data would fit within these categories, and that means it's very likely over the long term that we have a similar type mining scenario or applicability that you'd see at Hemlo. So again, a very good sign for Great Bear as we progress. The other comparison that you can make is to the Red Lake gold mine. And this is a major, developed project in our district that is widely acknowledged as one of the best high-grade gold mines in Canada. So if you look at the data that we've generated in drill intervals to date as the scatter plot, you can see that it overlaps very consistently with the Red Lake gold mine data. And it's a little bit hard to show. We, on the left side of the axis, the guys at Goldcorp used to generate data down to 30 or 40 centimeters width. We don't do that. We always aggregate over a bigger width. But you can see it's exactly the same data scatter that we have that the Red Lake mine had, except on the right side of the image. And on the right side of the image, you can see data largely from our LP fault zone, which is wide intervals of excellent grading mineralization. And you can clearly see that we have a bulk mining component and potential at the LP fault that you just don't have at the Red Lake gold mine. The Red Lake gold mine is a deep, narrow underground mine. We also have those components. We also have that potential, but we have the potential to go and also produce a big bulk tonnage system. So what is the value proposition at Great Bear, given that we've done really well so far? Well, all the analysts that are looking at the story, they have consensus targets over the next 12 to 18 months of something like about $18 to $25 a share. But the blue sky case on the end of this, if we keep doing well, we keep hitting with our drilling, and we keep developing the project, it's been said as recently as last week as up to $45 a share for the Great Bear case. And that's based on these analogs that I just showed you, the Red Lake gold mine, the Hemlo gold mine, these sort of things. If you look at neighbors in the district that are going into production, you can see right now that they're getting up to about $900 an ounce for their in situ reserve values. So we have a neighbor, it's Pure Gold. They're going into production now. So they have about a $900 million market cap, and they have about 1 million ounces of gold reserves. If the analysts are right about Great Bear, and we have more than 5 million ounces of gold, and we start getting those kind of valuations, well, you have to do the math, but it's many billions of dollars of potential value. That shows you that early on, it's early days with Great Bear, and we're really, we have a long way to go to capture that value, but that's the upside case. It's very exciting. So why Great Bear again? Recognized as a tier 1 discovery in a tier 1 jurisdiction, well capitalized, great track record of making money for shareholders, comparables to major deposits, and basically a maiden resource plan for next year that should bring in the value. Now, Willem asked me to mention a couple of things before logging off. One of those is repeating our same exploration strategy. Just recently, a few weeks ago, we did the same thing, but this time in the copper space. We put together a company that's working on a road accessible copper project in British Columbia. The company is called Kodiak Copper, and this is just a demonstration of the same exploration philosophy. 100% ownership, tight share structure, cheap to work, easy to access, and overlooked project with lots of historical data. Well, just a few weeks ago, we came out with the results of about 282 meters of 0.7% copper. That's not even the full drill hole assayed yet. But it's one of the highest grade copper discoveries in British Columbia of recent years. Very good values of gold in the assays as well. Like you're seeing gold in the multi-gram range in places. High grade copper, close to surface, 100% ownership of the project. And look at some of the numbers. In this area, copper is generally mined at about 0.3% copper, but look at the numbers in the column on that table, up to, you're seeing 1% copper all the way up to 2.5% copper in these results. So again, same philosophy, same group of people, And the prospect here is to try to repeat history, but in the copper space. So looking at the share price graphs in front of us, you can see Great Bear on the top over the last 3 years. You can see Kodiak Copper on the bottom over the last month. So the question is Kodiak Copper where the first red star, the left red star, is on the Great Bear chart? Well, really only more drilling will tell. And I just put a little star on the graph as well in the Great Bear to show you where we were trading during Commodity Discovery Day 2019. So with that, that's it. Thank you for listening. And I wish you a very entertaining remainder of the conference.
Thanks, Chris. Wonderful presentation. And let me continue on Kodiak Copper, because that's an intriguing situation. We all know that the geophysical footprint is enormous of that project. And I think at the start of this project is maybe even better than what you knew about the Dixie project at the start of Great Bear discovery. How confident are you that you can repeat the high-grade drill interceptions with Kodiak Copper? Because it is a huge footprint, but how continuous will this be?
Yeah, Willem. Well, we've drilled additional holes already, which we had to disclose because we did a financing. So we put out some pictures of those holes to show that indeed there was very good copper in them. Those are all assays pending, but it was sufficient at this point to bring in Teck Resources, which is the largest local copper producer, as a 9.9% shareholder of the company. So they had geologists out onto site several times. We're very impressed with the core. Ultimately, you don't know how big the system is yet because it's early days, but the copper footprint in soils is well over a kilometer. I think there's 3 copper porphyry centers across about 10 kilometers on that project. If you found a few good drill holes like this so far, the potential is certainly there. It's just going to be driven by the drill bit to recognize the total size of these zones. So far, so good.
Yeah, it's telling that Teck Resources did this deal with Kodiak Copper right after the publication of the first good drill holes. Some people are wondering, and that's also a question we see on YouTube now, when you were talking, when we were doing the presentation, why haven't any majors made a similar deal with Great Bear Resources?
Well, we actually have said no to those sort of deals several times. The main reason being that we wanted to make sure if it is a tier 1 discovery and it's a tier 1 resource that we end up generating, these are the kind of things that are not operated by independent mining companies over the long term. We'd like to get it as far down the path as we could, but the problem when you have a major investor locked in for, say, 15%, 20% of the company, 19.9, which is something that you frequently see, then you end up with reducing the competitive tension on an ultimate acquisition of the project. So with Great Bear, because it's a different situation, we know that it's in this major jurisdiction. We think it's one of the largest gold discoveries in the world right now. We think that the best value for us is to get it as far down the path as possible. If that is mining, fantastic. We'll take it all the way through. But because there's nothing like this that's found and operated independent of a big mining company, we'd like to have no handcuffs attached if that bidding process begins.
That's a great answer. And also many questions regarding a first resource calculation. When can we expect that for the Dixie project?
I would expect it next year, Willem. Basically, we're drilling it as rapidly as we can. We have 5 drill rigs on it right now. Like I said, we keep focused on the science. We want to make sure we understand and assay and analyze every bit of core that comes in. That's what we're really good at. But the system is so big that you gotta think most gold zones would have a strike length around the world of a few hundred meters, maybe several hundred meters. Ours is kilometers. That just means that it takes a long time to drill it off because of the raw size. So look for the maiden resource next year.
So if the start of an exploration program would be 0 and the sales of the project would be 100, where are we now?
I think we're probably right now at somewhere around 40%.
So it could still take you a number of years to understand the project better and to grow the company.
Yeah, what I'd look for over that intervening time period is just growth. As we keep putting out drill results, again, we put out some today. It's very typical of what we're seeing. The value will come in over time. We just had the first large bank analysts get online last week. What we need to do is hit their price targets and have them revise them higher. It's what we've been doing over the last year, and that's what we need to do to keep steadily building that value. Every drill hole de-risk the project. Every drill hole adds future, ounces to the mineralized system. So time is on our side here. We want to be able to grow. We want to make sure that we're as big as possible and as valuable as possible if and before anybody tries to take a run at us.
Will Great Bear still be independent in 2022?
I would hope so, but I would also think that it's not very likely.
Okay, well, thanks. Great presentation. Thanks. Thank
you, Mr. Taylor. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you for your presentation. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Chris Taylor of Great Bear Resources.